Hello everyone, Mark Tidsworth here. Welcome to this introduction to the Great ReEvaluation, Centering Church in the Way of Jesus. This is a learning experience, a course if you will, for churches and their leaders who want to maximize the transformation and growth opportunities embedded in our right now. I will share more about the course itself at the end of this video. Now, without further delay, let's introduce the Great ReEvaluation with two observations about the seismic shifts in our world. First, the Great ReEvaluation is underway. We sense it, we feel it. The intuitive types among us are keenly aware the currents in our culture are changing course. The logical, analytical types among us are observing the fact that significant change is occurring. Now there's even research indicating major change in church life is underway. Here is one change indicator from the larger world around us. After observing the major shifts in vocational life due to the volatility in our world, Dr. Anthony Klotz, an organizational psychologist at Texas A&M, is credited with coining the phrase, the Great Resignation. I love how he captures what's happening in the workplace with this new phrase, and here's how he describes this. From organizational research, we know that when human beings come into contact with death and illness in their lives, it causes them to take a step back and ask existential questions, like, what gives me purpose and happiness in life? And does that match up with how I'm spending my right now? So in many cases, these reflections will lead to life pivots. Existential questions, like what gives me purpose and happiness in life? And does that match up with how I'm spending my right now? Rhythms and routines at work are shifting. Working in person or remotely? Does one need to live in the same city where one's workplace is located? These are new questions and considerations in our work lives. Others in the workplace are reevaluating their particular vocations. People are questioning how they want to spend their right now. Who knows what tomorrow may bring? So, do I continue to serve as a teacher, as an attorney? Do I continue to work in insurance sales? What's my vocational calling look like now, given the shifts in our lives? Ask any workplace recruiter, and they will tell you that people are clearly reevaluating their vocational lives. But we can't limit the influence of these large-scale seismic changes to only the workplace or our vocations. Anthony Klotz was right to identify the Great Resignation, but I think what's happening is even larger in scope. People, you and I, are actively evaluating everything. Our personal relationships, how we engage with our family and friends, where we live, how we spend our time and resources. We are reevaluating our overall way of life as we know it, including our relationships with our faith and with our churches. The Great ReEvaluation includes significant reflection on how we will engage our faith and our churches from here onward. Research on church trends confirms what we at Pinnacle are observing in churches. Very few have as many people participating in in-person worship as they did before the pandemic. According to one large-scale survey done by the Hartford Institute on Religious Research, the volunteer base in churches is half of what it was before the pandemic. Half as many people are volunteering to serve through their churches compared to before the pandemic. It appears as if those persons in churches who were nearly dones pre-pandemic became dones during the pandemic. It also appears as if those who are participating out of a sense of duty or obligation or traditionalism, their motivations were broken during the pandemic and they are not returning. When we stop and think about it, doesn't reevaluation of our faith lives make sense? During the time when people are reevaluating everything in their lives, Christian people naturally reevaluate their faith and their relationships with their churches. People are asking themselves what it means to be a Christ follower and how and if they are going to relate to their churches given the seismic shifts in their lives. Everything around us is changing, and the Great ReEvaluation is underway. This brings us to the second observation. This reevaluation is excellent timing for God's church. I'm recalling what it was like working with churches in pre-pandemic times, which seems so long ago now. Let me remind us all of what church life was like in the recent past. We at Pinnacle regularly received requests from churches looking for how to revitalize their congregations. They observed their downward trajectory in terms of energy, vitality, participation, and they were appropriately concerned, looking for help. Then, when we responded with processes for moving into adaptive change, many churches pulled back. Some were ready to move boldly ahead, making the shifts necessary to respond to the modern to postmodern shifts that were already underway long before the pandemic arrived. Many others, though, were only interested in small incremental shifts, not convinced that more was needed. Their paradigms and forms for being church were working well enough, they believed, oftentimes just barely well enough, convincing themselves that a few tweaks to their paradigms would restore their vitality. So, before we romanticize pre-pandemic church life, let's remember what was happening. Christianity in North America was sliding down a precipitous slope toward irrelevance, and churches were scrambling for how to respond. I'm pretty sure we don't want to return to that, lest we find ourselves snapping back to the exact same predicament we were in pre-pandemic, as if nothing has happened. It turns out then that this pandemic, along with all the other volatility in our society, is perfect timing for church as we have known it. These large-scale shifts and seismic changes make it very clear to so many more of us that churches must adapt. This is like that transition period during the Protestant Reformation. The Christians of that age recognized things will never be the same, seizing the adaptive moment and moving forward with courageous faith. Currently, this great reevaluation is awakening the church to the startling and wonderful adaptive opportunities right before us. Yes, the great reevaluation is underway. Prefer it or not, like it or not, that train has left the station. We don't have a choice about that. What we do have a choice over is what we will do with this most excellent window of opportunity. We, as God's church, are presented with a prime opportunity to clarify our calling and move ahead with vigor and vitality into the future to which God calls us. When we have the eyes to see this wide open window, we find our hearts burning within us, ready to join God's movement toward bringing the kingdom to earth as it is in heaven. So how do we start? How do we begin moving forward to engage this exciting window of opportunity? How do we pivot, turning this experience toward transformational growth? That is what this course is all about. Centering church in the way of Jesus. Maximizing the transformation opportunities embedded in this current situation. I hope you can join us. After a thorough introduction to the current context, we will consider 6 key moves for maximizing the growth and transformation opportunities right before us as churches. Participants will engage presentations, small and large group discussion, all supported by an implementation workbook which will guide your church toward action. I do hope you can join us. The Great ReEvaluation is underway, no doubt about that. Since we know God is working in and through all life experiences, we are determined to engage this current situation, transforming into more robust and invigorated bodies of Christ. To that end, I look forward to partnering with you in this Great ReEvaluation learning experience.